Hey, Chef Brandy here with Plant Powered Metro New York, kicking off your holiday meal with a creative appetizer. Now, I don't know about you, but I get tired of having the same old holiday dishes. What I don't get tired of, though, is the holiday flavors. There's something about the flavors of the holiday that I love, but I just showing up with the same dish really kind of bores me after a while. So, in pure Chef Brandy fashion, I have created something that is fun, colorful, and will be a talking point for your holiday meal. And it is going to be called a holiday galette. Now, what is a galette? A galette is just a fancy name for an open face pie. It allows you the opportunity to be creative, to be flexible, and also gives you the permission not to have to be perfect because the whole point is to be rustic and homey. So let's get into this dish. So how do you make pie? You need flour. What we have right here is whole wheat, uh, a whole wheat flour, not a whole wheat pastry flour, just a whole wheat flour. Now this would work with whole wheat pastry flour, spelt flour, a gluten-free flour as well. My favorite one, however, happens to be spelt flour because spelt flour gives us a nice nutty, buttery flavor that we don't necessarily have an opportunity to have in the plant-based space all the time. Now I just added in a little bit of yogurt, some aquafaba, which is the juice from chickpeas, and some apple cider vinegar to kind of give it a buttermilk kind of play, the yogurt that we added into this, right? So just going to mix this together, and we don't want to mix it too much. We kind of just want to mix it so that it incorporates. We don't want to knead it a lot because the more you touch it, the more dense and let's say not as flaky the dough becomes. So similar to how you treat a biscuit, when you're making a biscuit, you want to touch it as little as possible. You just kind of want to bring everything together and then let it stay cold. And rest. So that's literally what we're doing here. We just put enough moisture in to bring it together. And I think this is pretty much where we're going to end up. And I'm going to set this aside so that it rests. Now, while this is resting, I'm going to add prepare rather, a couple of ingredients that we're going to add to the top of this crust. So we're going to start with one of our holiday favorites. I want to say the Brussels sprout. But this is the collection of everything that's going to go into this collect. We're going to have some cauliflower. We're going to also have some Brussels sprouts. In addition to that, we're going to do a little sweet potato and some caramelized onions, which are all very familiar holiday flavors. All right, so start with our good friend, the Brussels sprout. Brussels sprout. We see Brussels sprouts on our table a lot this time of year. A lot of times how we usually have them is that we cut them in half and we roast them. Now, these babies are going to get roasted as well, but instead of cutting them in half, we're doing something called shaving them, which is just a fancy name for cutting them into little pieces. So, just going to cut a couple of these up. And then once we're done cutting these Brussels sprouts, we're going to put them into a bowl and season them up. You know, I'm always amazed at the reputation that Brussels sprouts have. You know, a lot of kids, for some reason, growing up, just didn't like Brussels sprouts. I didn't have them enough in my house to really have a real opinion on them, but I don't remember having the relationship that others had. But I think a lot of that comes with the fact that most of the time, people don't like Brussels sprouts boiled. They're not as delicious boiled, but when you actually broil them or roast them, it really gives them an opportunity to show their personality. So we're going to take our Brussels sprouts, put them into a bowl, and add a little bit of seasoning. Now, I'm going to season these Brussels sprouts with a little bit of curry powder. And I like how this curry powder kind of plays in this dish. I like curry powder in general. I think it's a really convenient, is probably the best way, a convenient spice because it has so many flavors already in it that you don't have to really work that hard to end up with something pretty yummy. So this is our first piece to our galette. Now we're going to get into our good friend, the cauliflower. Now, cauliflower I find to be pretty flexible, meaning that it doesn't have a lot of flavor, so it gives you a blank palette and the opportunity to do with it whatever it is your imagination will allow. So what I'm going to do with it is cut it down to allow it to give us a little bit of texture in this dish. And I want to season this really, really simply. So I'm just chopping it up kind of roughly. It's going to be sprinkled on top of our galette with the other ingredients and just add a nice bit of texture and some flavor. We're also going to put that into its own little bowl and season it simply with our good friend onion powder, which definitely I feel like is a must-have. Onions in general are must-have during the holidays, and honestly, in any dish, we're going to give it a little bit of garlic, and we're also going to give it just a bit of rosemary. This is powdered rosemary, and we're gonna mix it around. Oh, and it already smells lovely. Like, this smells just like holidays. Like, something about rosemary when it goes into a dish just so takes you into just the holiday zone all the way. Oh, it smells amazing. And so next what we're gonna do is get into our good friend, the sweet potato. Now, this sweet potato was already roasted, so I'm literally just cutting it in half. I'm going to peel the skin off and then cut it into slices. Now, I've also made this dish with butternut squash instead of sweet potato, so that's an option as well if you want to create this dish. So it works well with the sweet potato, or it works well with the butternut squash. Now, when I will say, when I've done it with the butternut squash, I have left the butternut squash raw and sliced it thinly and put it into the dish. And so, just giving you a heads up, the reason I decided to cook the sweet potato is because the sweet potato takes a little longer to cook. It also, when you roast it, it brings out the natural kind of sweetness of it. And so I just like the note that it provides in its roasted form. And then it's kind of like twice roasted. I guess is the best way to say it, which is really just pleasant when you experience it in your mouth. So we have this good old sweet potato that is also going to be a part of our yummy dish. Now, beforehand, I made some caramelized onions. These caramelized onions were literally cut down, put into a pan with a little bit of thyme, black pepper, and onion powder, and then deglazed with just a little bit of white wine. If you don't want to use white wine, you could totally use vegetable broth. White wine just gives it another note, but broth or vinegar will do just fine in this recipe. Now, our galette dough has had enough time to rest, so what we're going to do is bring it here and get it rolled out. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to put just a little bit of flour on the bottom. Push it out a bit with the hand. Like I say, you don't want to work it too much. Just roll it out just enough to be able to allow it give it the room for the ingredients to have a place to lay, so to say. And it's the beauty of a galette versus, say, like a pie, is that it's expected to be what do they call it, rustic. So it's okay if it's not perfect. It's okay if it falls apart a little bit, and it gives us the perfect palette to really just be creative. Like, I am presenting this idea with 4 ingredients, but literally the possibilities are really endless when it comes to how this can show up on your holiday appetizer menu. Now, I'm going to take it and just place it onto a lined cookie sheet. So the easiest way I find to get it on is to fold it in half and then get it back. by opening it back up. So that's the easiest way I found to kind of make this happen. Now, what do we do after we get it here? We are gonna lay out. I'm gonna lay out our sweet potatoes. So I like to start by laying those out first. On the bottom, it's a base. There's a nice creaminess that you get with these sweet potatoes, and they're just a nice foundation for the dish. So I'm gonna lay these out here, and like I said, sweet potatoes are like quintessential holiday food. So we're gonna make sure that they're the center attraction of our galette. Now we're going to bring in our good friend Brussels sprouts, introduce them to the party. That curry powder that was there adds like just a nice fragrance, like it smells incredible. And it's also just a note that we're not necessarily accustomed to associating with Thanksgiving, but it works so very well. Now we're gonna add our friend the cauliflower on, add them to the party, let them have a place on the yummy open face pie, and then we're going to top it off with these pre-made caramelized onions, which will just get more crispy and yummy in the oven. Now, the beauty of, like I say, this rustic approach to the dish is that you don't have to be perfect. So literally, you decide how do you want to fold up these ends. Literally, just fold them up, get them up there. You can pinch them if you want to. You can just kind of roll them up if you want. The goal is just to create some type of border or pocket to prepare this for the oven. So now we have our prepped galette that is going to go into the oven, and when it comes out I will show you how to finish it. One thing before I put it into the oven, I'm going to finish the crust with a little bit of almond milk. It's going to help it to brown and also not dry out and get so hard during the cooking process. I'm just using my fingers as you see, but if you happen to have a fancy pastry brush, feel free to pull it out. It is the holidays and it's always nice to be able to use all of those random kitchen gadgets and tools that we purchase and tell ourselves we're going to actually use and then never really use them. The holidays is the best time, or a perfect excuse rather, to actually make use of our kitchen toolkit. All right, now it's ready to go into the oven. All right, now our galette is out of the oven, and this is what it looks like. So how do we serve up this nice, yummy appetizer? We cut it, you can either cut it in to little strips. If you happen to end up with a galette that's a little more square, you could potentially cut it into, not square, a little more circle, you cut it into like slices. I kind of like to go the slice route, so I tend to cut it kind of like in little diagonal pieces like this, which allows your guests to just kind of grab a bite, take one, try it out, and this is something that's very creative. It is colorful. It is festive, and it's something that your guests will kind of talk about, which is always a nice thing to have on your holiday table, especially to start off the meal. So we are going to finish this with just a couple of dried cranberries, because what says the holidays more than cranberries, considering we can only get them during the holiday time of year. Also, add a couple of crushed pecans, which just give us another note of flavor and also just screams holiday. So we're going to do that, and I am also going to finish this with some fig balsamic, because fig is another one of those flavors that gives us holiday vibes. And then just a little bit of fig balsamic just to bring the dish all the way home and finish off the presentation. So there you have it. For the first part of your plant-based dinner, we have a appetizer that is sure to please your guests, a fun, creative, colorful, festive roasted veggie sweet potato collette finished with some cranberries, pecans, and fig balsamic. Bon appetit.